Welcome here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com /wakeupcalldt. Proud to be here with you every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, hanging out here in the Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora studios, having some fun here on a beautiful Thursday morning. It's a little bit overcast outside here in central and upstate New York, but got to keep the positivity. Got to keep the positive mindset. Got to go out there and just enjoy life and give it all you got. So hopefully you're all having yourselves a great day. Hopefully you're having some fun. We are excited to be here with you. A Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Always excited to be here. As you could see, the first hour of today's show inside of the Charney's Menswear and Tuxedo Studios is going to be the 2019-20 American Athletic Football preview. And so if you look on this side, you'll see the American Athletic East Division, and on that side, you'll see the American Athletic West Division. We're going to start in the East and end in the West. Cincinnati, East Carolina, Temple, UCF, UConn for now, and USF in the America East Division. And in the American West Division, we have Houston, Memphis, Navy, SMU, Tulane, and Tulsa. So I'll be covering each of these teams inside of the first hour of today's broadcast on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora here on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com /wakeupcalldt. In hour number 2, we will end this video and start a new one. For those of you listening on mixlr.com /wakeupcalldt, you will just continue to hear the fast break, and then we'll come back with the second hour of the show. But for those of you on video, you're going to see us cut to a new video, which will have the ACC. And in covering the ACC, we'll have all of those teams in both of those divisions as well, from the Atlantic to the Coastal Division. So thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate it. Jay says Navy with an exclamation point. Navy's one of those teams that has had success in the past. And, you know, obviously running the triple option has shown some success, but we are hoping, and Ken Niumatalolo is hoping, that Navy will get back to it after a couple seasons playing kind of below the caliber of what Navy expects of themselves. So once again, I'm going to be on site, on location in Rhode Island with the American Athletic Conference summer kickoff with all of these schools that you see here and that you see here. And so let me do that. So here I'm going to be on site on location in Newport, Rhode Island with the American Athletic Conference, and then I will be flying straight over to Charlotte to be with the ACC and all those teams in the Atlantic and Coastal Division, obviously including Syracuse. So with that being said, there's plenty of show to be had, plenty to discuss, and plenty going on here. But I thought to not only do everything that I typically do at the conferences, the kickoffs that we have on site, on location in Rhode Island and in North Carolina, but to also give you a preview show for both. So hour number 1 today is dedicated to the American Athletic Conference. Hour number 2 is dedicated to the ACC. For those of you on Facebook Live, on facebook.com /live now DT, you are going to see 2 different videos. This one with the AAC, the next one with the ACC. Those of you listening on mixlr.com /wakeupcalldt, you are very simply going to just have everything work out pretty seamlessly here as you continue to listen on a fast break that'll be between hour number 1 and hour number 2. Listen to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on live streaming radio anywhere in the world on mixlr.com /wakeupcalldt, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And after they go there, they go here. Search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on Stitcher, TuneIn, Podbean, the RSS feed, iTunes podcast, YouTube, and Spotify to get the archive of shows. Proudly brought to you by Charney's Menswear and Tuxedos, our studio partner here on 3150 Erie Boulevard East in Syracuse, New York. Carvel DeWitt, our longest standing partner in a decade of work together. Carvel DeWitt proudly bringing you the exclusive Wake Up Call Sunday every single week. The Wildcat Sports Pub, where we have our West Genesee exclusive shows every month. Canine Campground, Dog Boarding, and Dog Daycare, the only place to bring your furry loving friend and somebody you can trust, somebody that you can go bring them there for the day, bring them there for a week, whatever it may be. Canine Campground Dog Boarding and Dog Daycare is located in East Syracuse, right off of Bridge Street, and is truly a unique and amazing place to bring your animals and to really feel safe when you're out of town or you're at work or you're at a wedding or whatever it may be. It's a place to go to that, I mean, I trust them more than I trusted some of my friends at the time to take care of, obviously what matters very, very much to me. So thank you to Canine Campground Dog Boarding and Dog Daycare. Home Team Pub, where we have our exclusive Liverpool shows every single month. Utica Pizza Company, where we have the exclusive Wake Up Call #1 pick Chicken Riggy Pizza. Honda City of Liverpool, True by Hilton, Camillus, Press Room Pub, where we have trivia every Tuesday at 7 p.m., and Dominic's Restaurant, where we have trivia every Wednesday at 7 p.m. And shout out to Dominic's. We had a tremendous week of trivia that happened yesterday, and shout out to Press Room. We had an amazing one as well. So Jay said UConn future football in AAC. So the UConn Huskies will not, according to the commissioner, there is no chance. So I'm going to put that here. So there is no chance for UConn to be a football-only school in the AAC. Commissioner said that, and you can go back and watch that video. It was right here on Wake Up Call. You're not going to find it anywhere else. It is on Facebook.com/live now DT in the videos, and it's also on Wake Up Call DT if you go to Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, and it is being added this morning actually to YouTube.com/Wake Up Call DT as well. So you'll be able to see it on each of those outlets, what the commissioner had to say. You can see it and hear it and all the good stuff. So let's hop into the AAC. Once again, I said we're going to be starting in the American East, so we'll go in alphabetical order. Cincinnati is coming off a tremendous season. This is year number 3 for Luke Fickell since leaving the Ohio State Buckeyes as a coordinator and coming over to the Cincinnati Bearcats after they had parted ways with Tommy Tuberville. So Cincinnati comes in to this season already having recent success. In the first season that he took over Cincinnati, Luke Fickell was 4-8. Last season he was 11-2, 6-2 in the AAC. Their schedule this year includes teams like UCLA and Ohio State. Cincinnati will face off against UCLA on August 29th in a home game. On September 7th, they will go on the road to Ohio State. They will also be playing at Marshall and Miami of Ohio in their non-conference games. They will face off their first conference game of the season against UCF at home. Cincinnati was a team that had become relatively irrelevant. There was some talent on the team and some positives there, but the team had become somewhat irrelevant in the ending hours of Tommy Tuberville being there. Luke Fickell taking over. You expect the first season to have some turmoil, which it did, but ultimately in his second season, that's a big turnaround, and there's going to be a lot of expectation this year as Cincinnati has that record of 11-2 after being 4-8 is a massive jump, 7 more wins than the season before. So big time for this Cincinnati Bearcats team. They returned Desmond Ridder, their quarterback, who had 2,445 yards passing last season. He had 20 touchdowns. They also returned Michael Warren II, who had 1,329 yards rushing on 244 attempts. Cincinnati likes to run the ball. 19 touchdowns on the ground for him. Their top receiver returning is Josiah DeGuara, 38 catches, 468 yards, 5 touchdowns. Their leading tackler that's coming back is Jarrell Wright, 58 tackles last season. Jarrell White, Brian Wright had 5 sacks last season. He's back. And James Wiggins is back after having 4 interceptions last season. Luke Fickell's record, as I said, if you put them both together, 11-2 and 4-8, his record with the Cincinnati Bearcats is 15-10. And his career record as a coach is 21-17. And there's been some changes. I do want to do this. I should have done this before. There's some changes that have been made in the American Athletic Conference, and really team by team here. Connecticut got rid of their offensive coordinator. Frank Gouffre is there now. John Dunn is gone. On defense, They also brought in Lou Spanos and got rid of Billy Crocker. East Carolina has a new offensive coordinator in Donnie Kirkpatrick, which makes sense because they have a new head coach in Mike Houston. East Carolina's defense, and Tony Peterson's out as the offensive coordinator at East Carolina. Once again, in is Donnie Kirkpatrick. And East Carolina's defensive coordinator, new one is Bob Trott. The old one was David Blackwell. In Houston, there's a new offensive coordinator, and this makes sense as well because Houston brings in Dana Holgorsen, the longtime West Virginia coach. He brings in Marquel Blackwell and Brandon Jones for offensive coordinators. Going out is Kendall Briles. Houston's new defensive coordinators are Doug Belk and Joe Cawthon, and out is Mark D'Onofrio. Memphis has a new offensive coordinator, or coordinators, I should say, under Mike Norvell, who's returning. The new offensive coordinators under Mike are Kevin Johns and Ryan Silverfield. Going out is Kenny Dillingham. And on defense, Adam Fuller comes in. Chris Ball comes out for the Memphis Tigers. Navy just replaced defense. They're keeping their offensive side of things. Navy's defensive coordinators are now Brian Newberry and Brian Norwood. Out is Dale Pearson. Temple has a new offensive coordinator and a new defensive coordinator with their new head coach, Rod Carey, coming in. The offensive coordinator, there's two of them, Mike Yermovich and Thad Ward. Going out is Dave Patinod. And Temple's defensive coordinators are now Francis Brown and Jeff Knowles. Going out is Andrew Thacker. And for Tulane, their offensive coordinator under Willie Fritz, the new one is Will Hall. Out is Doug Ruse. And Tulsa has a new defensive coordinator under Philip Montgomery. That is Joseph Gillespie. And going out is Bill Young and USF. So UCF doesn't have any changes going on here, nor does SMU. But USF, South Florida, has a new offensive coordinator in Kerwin Bell. And going out is Sterling Gilbert under Charlie Strong. So with that being said, some changes have been made to the American Athletic Conference. A lot of new offensive and defensive coordinators are shaking things up here right now for this conference. And so it's going to be interesting to see how quickly they gel and, what these decisions ultimately do for these teams, not just in the conference, but overall as we step forward here with the American Athletic Conference. So let's go back to Cincinnati. And so looking at Cincinnati, like I said, I gave you the returners that they had. And one of the opposing assistant coaches in the American of Cincinnati said, against Cincinnati, made the statement, quote, "Night and day difference in 2 years. They're bigger and way more physical. The only thing that will slow them down is Luke Fickell taking another job," end quote. So the thought that Luke Fickell could leave. Now, Cincinnati has been in need of help for a long time, in need of growth. Like I said, after Tommy Tuberville, things kind of, fizzled out there. The move had to be made to bring in some spark to this team, and Luke Fickell has been that spark coming from Ohio State and moving on to Cincinnati. Like I said, 4-8 in his first season, 11-2 last season in his second season, and looking to get even stronger from here as the team moves forward. They have a bunch of returning starters. Rashard Medeiros and Thomas Geddes are returning at wide receiver that started last year. They are returning a portion of their offensive line. Their right guard is returning Morgan James and Chris Ferguson. Tight end Josiah DeGuara, who is their leading receiver, is back. Their quarterback, like I said, Desmond Ridder is back, and their running back, Michael Warren II, is back. Defensively, they return 7 starters. Kobe Bryant is back. Cam Jeffries at corner. Derek Forrest and James Wiggins at safety are also back. Brian Wright at linebacker and Perry Young at linebacker and Michael Pitts at defensive end all are returning starters for the Cincinnati Bearcats. And if you're watching and listening here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, first and foremost, thank you. We are doing a full preview of the American Athletic Conference starting in the East, which is right over here, and ending in the West Division in the first hour of today's show. So we just talked about Cincinnati. My feeling is, did I say Kobe Bryant? I did not say Kobe Bryant. Jason just asked if I said Kobe. I said Brian, right? Oh, I did say Kobe Bryant. Pardon me. Yes, cornerback Kobe Bryant is a returning starter for Cincinnati. It's Coby. So, yes, Kobe Bryant, a different Kobe Bryant, not spelled the same way, but nevertheless, Kobe Bryant is playing for Cincinnati now. Wow. So, pretty crazy. There is no Cincinnati NBA franchise, so a little bit interesting there. So, Cincinnati, yes, returning many players here on offense, 7, on defense, 7. Defensive line is going to be interesting for Cincinnati. I think they're going to have a good season. My feeling on them is strong. I do think that Cincinnati is not going to have a slouch year. I think Luke Fickell is going to continue to be good. I don't know if they can be 11-2 again, but I am definitely excited to watch them play their first 2 weeks, home against UCLA and on the road at Ohio State. Big time games coming up. And for everybody that says that the American Athletic Conference doesn't play anybody tough, oh my God. So, well, they're playing the Pac-12 and they're playing the Big Ten. So this will definitely be interesting, and I'm excited to see it. And also, if you're an internet troll, you should, I think we're calling you back. Should we paging internet trolls, please return to your parents' basement. Put the sock back on the door, and please wash yourself. It's been 6 months. Also, if you cannot eat cereal for every single meal of the day, and probably, just for, giggles, take your sweatpants off and try to do something with your life. That's just, that's a PSA to all internet trolls. What did Jason say? UCF is feeling rough right now after the MAC news broke. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on with UCF. We're going to hop into UCF in just a second. But I do want to get to our next team here, which is East Carolina, the Pirates. The Pirates have a new head coach. His name is Mike Houston. It's his first season there. His career record as a head coach is 80-25 over 8 years. So good stuff happening there for East Carolina. Now, they have had some wins over Power 5 teams in recent history. They have done some good things. Mike Houston looks to regenerate here. And was the Ralph talking to someone? What was that? The Ralph. Who's the Ralph? So, no, we were talking. I mean, I was giving a little PSA. Was that Ralph talking to somebody? No, I don't think so. I don't have Pops' voice. So even though when people call on the phone, telemarketers, they always thought I was my father. So, which was very funny because they would fight with me and they'd be like, "No, we know it's you, Mr. Zatora," and it wasn't. So East Carolina, folks, the East Carolina Pirates. Next up here, Mike Houston. I got a good feeling about Mike Houston. I like Scotty Montgomery. I like Ruffin McNeil. Appreciate my relationships with both of those coaches, the last couple coaches that were with East Carolina, Ruffin and then Scotty. But Mike Houston, who I've gotten a chance to talk to as well, very nice guy. Definitely a good first impression from him to me, I would say. Definitely made a good first impression on me. Very excited about what Mike Houston can do. I feel good about East Carolina under Mike Houston. I really do. They're returning 4 starters on their depth chart on offense, though, so there's going to be some changes, a lot of changes. And with a new head coach, you anticipate that there's going to be changes because you now have to make a good impression on this coach. Doesn't matter what the last staff thought about you, and it doesn't matter what their expectations are. Expectations are different now, and this coach has to see you for the first time. A depth chart, 4 returning on offense, left tackle, Deontay Smith, Cortez Heron, their left guard, and their center, Peyton Winstead. And so really outside of their backup quarterback, Reed Herring, everybody that's a returning starter is on the offensive line except for the right guard and right tackle. Defensively, there's 7 returning starters for East Carolina. They are Kendall Futrell, the defensive end. He will be a senior. Alex Turner, nose tackle. Jalen Price, defensive tackle. Bruce Bivens, inside linebacker. Aaron Ramsher, inside linebacker. Colby Gore, cornerback. And Devondre Robinson, free safety, is returning on the team as well. Holton Ahlers is back on the team as a returning leader, 1,785 passing yards with 12 touchdowns. Holton Ahlers is also their leading rusher, returning for East Carolina. So, I mean, it's good to have a dual threat quarterback, but you hope some running backs are going to step up. He had 6 touchdowns and 592 yards last season on 119 attempts. Receiving, we have DeAndre Ferrier, 372 yards, 2 touchdowns. Definitely want to pick that up if that's your returning leader offensively and receiving. Devondre Robinson, 77 tackles, comes back to you. Sack leader Kendall Futrell and Alex Turner both had 4 apiece. They're back. and 3 players were tied with at least one interception. So one was the leading interception getter for the East Carolina Pirates. Obviously, you want to change that. So it's a new world with this team. It is definitely a new world with the East Carolina Pirates. And, with a new head coach and some changes being made, the hope is there's going to be some positives that'll come from this. I'm excited to see Holton Ahlers and what he can do. I'm excited to see what Mike Houston can do. I think East Carolina, like I said, with any coach in their first season, may struggle. Their schedule is going to start at NC State, and they've obviously played well against NC State in the past. This is a nice little rivalry inside of North Carolina, and it also is ACC, AAC, so 2 teams that I cover. And like I said, the rivalry has been pretty good in recent history for East Carolina. Gardner Webb after that, and they will also play Old Dominion and William and Mary before they get into their conference schedule in its entirety, but they will be at Navy in the 3rd week of the season, which will be their first official AAC game. So I don't anticipate that East Carolina is going to have a tremendous record, but I believe, anywhere from 4 to 5 wins is where I'm going with East Carolina. I think in the future and the build, they're going to get better, but obviously that takes time. Jay says East Carolina is going to have 4 wins this season as well. The Temple Owls are next up here in the American Athletic Football Preview as we start there it is, got to do opposite here. As we start in the East and end in the West, I want to actually show a little piece here. The American Athletic Conference decided to take their logo and do something pretty cool that is make each put each of the logos of other teams inside of their American logo. So we already covered East Carolina, and we are on our way to Temple right now, and we have already covered the Cincinnati Bearcats as we continue on in this thing. So let's jump back into this AAC preview. The Temple Owls, before we take our first step aside of the show, Temple Owls schedule, they have Maryland and they're at Buffalo. I think it's interesting here that Buffalo was brought up as a potential team to come into the American to fill it out at 12 when UConn leaves, and the fact that Temple's playing Buffalo, and that also another team brought up is playing East Carolina, and that's Old Dominion. I think that Buffalo would be good. I mean, Old Dominion had a win over Syracuse in men's basketball in the Dome last season, but, Buffalo did as well. Buffalo's a good team. Women's basketball, men's basketball, football. Khalil Mack obviously came from there recently and is now doing a hell of a job for the Chicago Bears, courtesy of John Gruden letting him out of Oakland, which made no sense. But that's fine. So, sometimes things just don't work out, but Khalil Mack is a hell of a talent, and Temple will be playing his alma mater of Buffalo, which I find to be interesting. I'm really going to circle that game and pay close attention to it because of the thoughts that, I gave you my list of teams around the country that I think would make sense or would be intriguing to be in the American Athletic Conference, and Buffalo is a front runner with I got a bunch of schools that I came up with, but really there's only like 2 to 3 I felt really, really good about that I thought would be intriguing, and one of them is Buffalo. So Temple will play Buffalo this season. They have a new head coach in Rod Carey. Rod Carey's record over 7 years is 52-30. And like I said, he's in his first season. Coming back, the depth chart has 7 returning starters for Temple. We have Isaiah Wright, their wide receiver. We also have wide receiver Brandon Mack. We have left guard Jova Fair. We have, who returns on the offensive line. We have center Matt Hennessy. We have right guard Vincent Picozzi and Adam Klein, the right tackle. And their quarterback is back, Anthony Russo. They have 6 returning on defense, and that is Dan Archibong at defensive tackle. Linebackers, all 3 of the starters come back, which is big for a head coach who's coming in to a team on his first season with the team. Sam Franklin, Sean Bradley, and Chappelle Russell. Love that, Chappelle Russell, because I'm a big Dave Chappelle fan. All those linebackers are back. Linwood Crump is back at corner, and Benny Walls is back at strong safety. The leaders that are returning, Anthony Russo at quarterback had 2,563 yards, 14 passing touchdowns. Rushing, Yeager Gardner comes back 253 yards on 65 attempts and 1 touchdown. Temple's better than that. Definitely have to step those up. Receiving, Brandon Mack, 44 receptions, 601 yards, and 5 touchdowns as your returning leader. Tackles with 78, Sean Bradley. Sacks returning as Quincy Roche with 6 sacks. And interceptions, Benny Walls and Linwood Crump. 2 returning starters. Crump, a corner, once again, as I had mentioned, and Walls, a safety, both returning with 3 interceptions apiece. Rod Carey, listen, now Temple had some success before Steve Addazio. Oh, what did Jason say? Buffalo, 2 Bulls. No, thanks. LOL. Nice. And shout out to James who's watching. I believe this is one of the first times that Jay's been watching. So shout out to you, James. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in as I do this football preview for the American Athletic Conference before I head to beautiful, hopefully sunny and vibrant Rhode Island in just a few days. So thank you to everybody that's watching and listening. I appreciate it very much. And shout out to Jay. It means a lot to me, brother. So Temple is got another head coach. I mean, Steve Addazio, when they came into the American, Steve Addazio was okay. So the last season of the Big East, when Syracuse and Pitt and Louisville and everybody was still there, in that final season, Temple was coming back into the Big East. And when Temple was coming back into the Big East, Steve Addazio was their coach. Then Steve Addazio decided to take the job at Boston College, and when he took the job at Boston College, then obviously Temple has Matt Rhule. And then Temple more recently, so they had Matt Rhule, and then Matt Rhule went on to Baylor in the Big 12 just a few seasons ago. And then in the last couple seasons, there's been another head coach that was calling Temple, home for a little while. And, it's kind of an interesting shakeout here because the coaches have changed so much, and Jeff Collins was the head coach. Now he's the head coach of Georgia Tech. So now they have Rod Carey. The thing about Temple is Temple was the bottom of the barrel. Whenever Syracuse played Temple, if they lost to Temple, the notion was that Syracuse is one of the worst football teams in the country if you lose to the bottom. And Temple was one of the bottom feeders. They were one of the bottom 5 and whatnot. Where UConn is now, that's where Temple used to be. And Temple has risen out of that, thanks to coaches like Steve Addazio and Matt Rhule and Jeff Collins. Well, Rod Carey is the next chapter in this. The hope is that Rod Carey is going to stick around. The hope is that Rod Carey is going to be here for more than a couple seasons. Temple has had recent success, which has propelled a lot of these coaches to take jobs inside of the Power 5. And the hope is that somebody will stick around Temple and continue to make them a threat, because Temple has played Penn State and Notre Dame well in recent history. They've made it to bowl games. They took down Navy in Annapolis, in Navy's home. So there's a lot to be said about what Temple's done, but every couple of years they change their head coach. So Rod Carey's a new head coach, and hopefully as they move forward now, they'll have some success. I can buy Temple getting to 7 wins this season, so why don't we stick with that and say Temple can get there. UCF is up next. Jay, I hope, Jason Lucas, I hope that you're watching, my brother. So UCF is obviously coming back here under Josh Heupel. Scott Frost had a couple seasons there, did a tremendous job, brought a team that was 0-12 to a 6-6 record, helped them to be bowl eligible, and obviously have some fun with that. And then the next season helped them to be undefeated and win an American Athletic Football Championship. And then Scott Frost leaves for Nebraska, his alma mater. Josh Heupel comes in. Heupel leads them to an undefeated season all the way through the American Athletic Championship game. And then they lose only by 8 points to LSU on the West Coast in their bowl game. So UCF has had a tremendous last few years here. Heupel is 12-1 as the head coach of the team, and this is his first head coaching gig, so he's 12-1 overall. And when we look at UCF, their returning leaders, we'll get to it in a second here. DJ Mack returned to the team with 3 touchdowns, 619 yards passing, but we have to talk about that. Greg McCrae is back on the team this year, 133 attempts rushing last season, 1,182 yards and 10 touchdowns. Receiving, Gabriel Davis is back, 815 yards, 7 touchdowns, 53 catches. Richie Grant returns and tackles with 109, the first of any of the returning tacklers that I've spoken of in the American Athletic East Division that had 100 or more tackles in a season. Brandon Hayes is back with 3 sacks and interceptions, Richie Grant as well. So Richie Grant leads the team in tackles with 109 last year and interceptions with 6. They have 7 returners on their depth chart with Cole Snyder, returning starters, I should say. Cole Snyder at right guard, Jordan Johnson at center, Jake Brown at left tackle, Otis Anderson at wide receiver, Trey Nixon and Gabriel Davis at wide receiver. Adrian Killins Jr. is back at running back as well. Defensively, our returners on the depth chart, I should just say returners on the depth chart, not necessarily starters. Defense, we have Brandon Hayes starting defensive end, Nate Evans starting linebacker, Brandon Moore and Neville Clark starting corners, and Richie Grant starting safety, who is a huge piece of this team's defense. So looking at UCF, I think that, obviously this team is going to have success. The issue is that they have gone through injuries, and we know that Mackenzie Milton is not going to be ready anytime soon. Had a very, 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 very scary injury. DJ Mack, the potential starting quarterback for UCF, is out with a broken ankle. So that has gone down as well. The redshirt sophomore quarterback will miss a bunch of time with a broken ankle. Now, UCF made an announcement. Quarterback Daryl Mack, a.k.a. DJ Mack Jr., suffered a broken ankle from non-football related activity this week, and there is no specific timetable for his return. He will not be available for training camp. We hope Daryl has a speedy recovery, but we are excited about the talent we have in the quarterback room to start the season. End quote. So, the gruesome leg injury from Mackenzie Milton of the will he ever walk again? Could he ever even play football again? Thank you to the good Lord Jesus that he's okay, and hopefully he will be able to play football again. More importantly, be able to live a full and healthy life, and that he will heal completely and for good, and through the grace of God, no matter what as well. So, you got a DJ Mack injury, and you have an injury to the Mackenzie Milton situation. Obviously, he was your starter. So you have your starter and your backup both down with injuries, which is very sad for this team, a team that has had so much success, tremendous success over the last few seasons. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for what UCF has been able to do. They brought in Brandon Wimbush from Notre Dame, who has been underwhelming. But the question is now, this is Wimbush's team for the foreseeable future, because they're not going to have DJ Mack and they're not going to have Mackenzie Milton. Now, as soon as this team loses a game, or if they start off sluggish, people are going to say stupid things and oh, look, UCF isn't as good as they thought they were. I mean, basically, if UCF loses any game ever, they're a bad team, because they won so many games in a row. What was it, 25 in a row? That as soon as they lost, we're like, oh, well, typical UCF. You can't say that. If a team wins 25 games in a row and it means nothing to you, and the first time they lose, you freak out, you're waiting to have a reason to say that they stink. How many teams win 25 games before losing a game? So let me answer that for you. Pretty much none. So UCF, they're going to, to me, they have a lot of talent, and Josh Heupel has proven that he can continue what Scott Frost had started. My frustration is with the injuries that have happened, and Jay says he thinks UCF will go 8-4. I think that we look at UCF's schedule, Florida A&M and at FAU. I like that matchup with at FAU and with FAU, I should say, with Lane Kiffin there. And here's the cool thing. FAU is another team that I brought up should potentially join the American Athletic Conference, because then we would have FAU, UCF, and USF all in the state of Florida. And I think that would be really good for recruiting. And because Florida is such a hotbed for recruiting, I think that'd be good. And because FAU and UCF are all about speed, I thought that'd be cool too, especially if Lane Kiffin sticks around. So the schedule for UCF, Florida A&M, at FAU, Stanford, and at Pittsburgh. Here's the thing. There's certain people that I know that if they lose any of these games, despite having their third option at quarterback, that there's going to be, oh, look at UCF, da, 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 da. When it's like, reality of it all is FAU is a pretty good team. Stanford historically is a good team. And Pittsburgh won the Coastal Division last year. So, even though they struggled and obviously did not show up in the ACC championship game against Clemson, but they did win the Coastal Division. Now, So I think UCF's playing a good schedule is what I'm trying to say. I think FAU, Stanford, and Pittsburgh are good out-of-conference games. Ultimately, though, I think the injury bug is going to affect them. I think they're going to be judged by it more than any other team because if you're LSU, let's say as an example, and you lose a game, but you have a bunch of injuries to your back of this and the other thing, they get a pass. Oh my God, LSU, look at what happened. But if you're UCF and you lose any game with your third string option at quarterback, then you suck as a school. And it makes absolutely no sense. You know, the game where they say, well, LSU didn't play a bunch of their starting defensive players. Well, UCF was without their best player on their team, which is Mackenzie Milton, arguably, obviously their best offensive, quarterback option. So, and potentially the best option offensively in general, if not the best option on the team. I am a big fan of Otis Anderson and Adrian Killins Jr., though. So, I mean, the reality of it all is that UCF has been good and not respected. And now, due to the injury bug, I don't think that they're going to have a perfect season. I don't think we're going to see that again in the regular season this year. I can feel good with 7 or 8 wins, I would say, for UCF. Next one up is UConn before we finish off the East here. UConn is temporary. UConn is not going to be sticking around forever. UConn is here for now. They're not here for a long time, but trying to be here for a good time. The UConn Huskies have struggled very much so in since Randy Edsall left. Randy Edsall helped usher them in from FCS to FBS, bring them from Division I AA to a Division I A team. He left and went to Maryland. He came back, and the team was in shambles, and he has a 78-90 record at the school at UConn in 14 years. He's 78-90. Overall, he's 100 and 124 in 18-plus years of coaching. And Randy Edsall, obviously, back with the team in his second iteration. And Jay says UConn is a mess, and by all realities, UConn is they are, by all stretches of the imagination. So they do have what I consider to be an easier schedule this year, though. They have Wagner. They'll be at UMass as well in a non-conference game. Illinois, kind of a toss-up, but probably going to beat UConn because UConn struggle like crazy. And at Indiana, which is an interesting game because I know some kids from HB Plant that are on Indiana from down in Tampa. And also at Indiana is Mr. Stevie Scott, who is going into his true sophomore season at running back out of Onondaga County and my alma mater, CBA. So shout out to Stevie Scott. I'm a huge fan. Can't wait for you to be in the NFL so that I can draft you in fantasy football. The UConn Huskies, though, they are truly going through a lot of turmoil. They return 6 on their offensive depth chart. Keon Dixon at wide receiver. Left tackle Ryan Vandemark, Cam DeGeorge, and Nino Leone are all coming back. Cam DeGeorge left tackle, Nino a center. Pardon me. Matt Perlt comes back at right tackle, and Kevin Mensah comes back at running back. Defensively, they return 9, which is the most of any team that I've mentioned on the American Athletic East Division side so far. They return their entire defensive line with Lawal Ugok at defensive end, other DN, Jonathan Pace, defensive tackles, Caleb Thomas and Travis Jones, outside linebacker Eddie Hahn, corners Taj Herring-Wilson and Ryan Carroll, and safety Tyler Coyle all return onto the team. Their leaders are Marvin Washington, a returning leader at quarterback, who had 147 yards passing and 1 touchdown because they were all over the place with their quarterbacks last year as well. Kevin Mensah had 225 attempts, 1,045 yards on the ground, and 6 touchdowns. So they did have something that Syracuse has not had in a while, and that is a 1,000-yard running back, which UConn had last year, but Syracuse did not. Take a note of that, folks, because that doesn't sound good when you put it on paper. Receiving Xavier Scott, 228 yards and a touchdown. Tackler Tyler Coyle with 109 tackles, another player that's returning with over 100 tackles in the American East. Kevin Jones with 2.5 sacks returns, and O'Neal Robinson returns to UConn, leading the team last year with 2 interceptions. So Randy Edsall's back for the second time around. He was the running backs coach for Rob Drummond when Rob was playing for Syracuse under Coach McPherson. And obviously, rest in peace to Coach Mack, and God bless to you. UConn, the irony of that is so you have Coach Mack who hires Randy Edsall. Randy Edsall goes on to UConn, and Paul Pasqualoni, who used to be the head coach at Syracuse, who was fired, went on to UConn to become their head coach for a short time as well. So Syracuse and UConn have a long-standing rivalry, and they share coaches. Well, Randy Edsall, I'm hoping the best for him. I always appreciate talking with him. I have the utmost respect for Randy Edsall. I love how he talks about the Northeast and recruiting in the Northeast. I love his passion and his frustration with wanting this program to be better. The question is, what's UConn going to do for football? Because they want to join the Big East again, and allegedly they're going through the process of doing that. And in order to join the Big East, they have to understand the Big East does not have a Division 1A FBS football conference, which means that UConn either has to drop back to Division 1 AA where they were. So Randy Edsall pulled them out of it, and he could see them fall back into it, or they go independent, or they throw themselves in another conference. But I don't know who the heck would want to take UConn. I mean, unless it's one of the group of five, who would want to take UConn? And even then, I mean, who would want to take UConn as a football-only school, not getting Gino Auriemma and their basketball program or the rich history of their men's basketball program? So I don't know who the hell would want this, but Connecticut made the decision, and they got to live with it. They're leaving a conference that has everything for a conference that focuses on basketball. So their football team is left hanging, and this, I think, ultimately is just a dicey situation. How do I think Connecticut's going to do? I'm going to give them – I'll give them 3 wins this year, but I think they're going to struggle, unfortunately. And this could be their last year in the conference, or it may not be. You know, people are prognosticating that UConn will leave the American as early as 2020, but when I spoke with Mike Oresco, and you can go back and watch that video, when I spoke with Mike Oresco, the commissioner of the conference, he said, hey, they're playing this year, and we got to go through our bylaws, and they could be here for another couple of years. You know, this could be a lot longer than what other people think. So it depends on what's going on. And listen, if I'm the American Athletic Conference and UConn wants out, I got the power. So I would say, okay, you know what? You can get out of your contract early, but I want to add this many millions of dollars to it, and I want to do this, and I want to do that. Listen, if UConn wants out, I'd be asking for all kinds of money. Take what you can get, because if they're going to leave no matter what, and they want to leave sooner than later, okay, that's fine, but you're going to pay for it. The USF Bulls is how we're going to finish off the alphabetical order of the American East Division as I give you my full American Athletic Football preview heading into the AAC summer kickoff that I will be on site on location with JT Molo with down in Newport, Rhode Island. Beautiful Newport, Rhode Island. USF, first and foremost, I want to talk about their schedule. They're playing at Georgia Tech, which is pretty cool because that means Charlie Strong is going up against Jeff Collins, who he faced every season inside of the American East Division because Jeff Collins was the Temple head coach. So Charlie Strong and Jeff Collins will go up against each other again, 2 coaches that know each other. Just Jeff Collins will be the Georgia Tech head coach when it happens this year. So I like that. I'm intrigued by it because they've already faced off against each other in the American. Wisconsin is their first game on August 30th at home. They also have South Carolina State, and they'll be facing BYU at home as well. And obviously, the last game of the regular season is their marquee matchup in their rivalry, USF at UCF. So this one will be played in Orlando, not in Tampa this year, this time around, which will be exciting. And the USF-UCF game, always an exciting one to watch. Blake Barnett is back onto the team. He is the returning leader at quarterback. He has 2,710 yards and 12 passing touchdowns. Returning rusher is Jordan Cronkright, who had 184 attempts for 1,121 yards and 9 rushing touchdowns. Receiving leader coming back to the South Florida Bulls is Mitchell Wilcox, 43 receptions, 540 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Leading tackler is Greg Reeves, who's back with 89 tackles. Kirk Livingston is the sack leader, who is back with 4. And interceptions, Nick Roberts is back on USF with 3. And ultimately, I think, obviously under Willie Taggart, they grew into something special. Under Charlie Strong, I think that, he benefited from the recruiting and everything that Willie Taggart had in his first year when he came to USF. And now we have to see what Charlie and his staff really can do. And they have made some changes, as I mentioned earlier. Returning, though, they have 9 returners on their offensive depth chart. Randall St. Felix, Stanley Clairvaux are both coming back at wide receiver. William Atterbury, at left tackle. Left guard Demetrius Harris, Brad Cecil, their center, and right tackle Marcus Norman. So they return 4 out of 5 offensive starters on the offensive line. Tight end Mitchell Wilcox is back, who's their leading receiver. Jordan Cronkright, like I said, running back, and Blake Barnett at quarterback. He's back, and there's a lot of discussion and hope and possibility for, positive possibilities for Blake Barnett. Some people are really excited about this. And but an opposing AAC assistant coach said about USF, quote, "They're sloppy and they need to work on their discipline. They have players, but they're a step off from the top programs in the league," end quote. Some interesting words there. Defensively, on the depth chart, they have 6 returners. Greg Reeves at D end, Kevin Kegler at D tackle, Kirk Livingston at D end. So 3 out of 4. Middle linebacker Nico Sawtell is back for USF, as well as Mike Hampton, corner, and Nick Roberts at strong safety. So I am a believer that UCF, they're going to do some good things, but they don't have DJ Mack now. So I'm a believer that in the American Athletic East Division, I think ECU is going to get better. I think that Temple is going to be okay. I think Cincinnati might be the team to beat. And I think UCF, goes as Wimbush goes. But ultimately, I like Cincinnati on this side of the division. And USF, I don't necessarily believe that they are a lock to be a threat in the East Division. I do think they'll finish in the top 3. I think that UConn will probably be last. I think that ECU, by default, will be second to last, but I think they will improve. And I think that Cincinnati is going to end at the top. And I think USF and UCF, it depends on how it goes, but Temple's also going to have something to say about that. So, for USF, the jury's kind of out on this one. For me, I do think that they could be better than 6-6. That's what some people have prognosticated. I think they could be better than that, but it'll be interesting to see what USF does as this season steps forward. Charlie Strong is 17-8 at the school over 2 years. This is his 3rd season there, and career record is 70-45, a lot better than people give him credit for in 9+ years of being a head coach. So USF, I think that they're kind of, they could finish second, they could finish 3rd. I think Temple's going to have a nice approach. I think UCF, if they can navigate injuries, will do some good things. But I feel really good about Cincinnati as we stand right now. Jay said that he believes Cincinnati will be 1, USF will be 2, and Central Florida will be 3. Let's take a step aside for a fast break on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. It's a very quick one. When we call, all of our fast breaks are quick. That's why they're called fast breaks. After we take a step aside, we'll come back with the West Division of the American Athletic as we preview the entire American Athletic Conference ahead of the AAC summer kickoff.
Carvel DeWitt, it's what happy tastes like. Do you know why? Because we make ice cream. Creamy, rich, flavorful ice cream. Not yogurt or iced milk like some of our competitors. Ice cream. Fresh, by hand, daily. For the calorie conscious, we have something new for you. Our new Carvelite. Same great flavor, creaminess, and texture of our regular ice cream with only 35 calories an ounce. So whether you want an ice cream cake, flying saucer, dasher, Carvelange, hard or soft ice cream, we will satisfy your craving with our fresh, handmade regular or new Carvelite ice cream. Carvel DeWitt. It's what happy tastes like.
Breaking news. The Press Room Pub, located on 220 Harold Place in historic Harold Square in downtown Syracuse, is where entertainment and sports become one. Trivia is every Tuesday at 7 p.m. with host Dan Tortora. Sports are always on from every angle at the Press Room Pub. The main floor features a full bar and restaurant with 2 private party rooms featuring games, a colossal television, and more. So head out for lunch, dinner, or a drink and plan your parties with the Press Room Pub, 220 Harold Place in downtown Syracuse. Call 315-569-4345 for more information. The Press Room awaits you.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. Proud to be here with you every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. And also, very proud to be here with you on Facebook Live on facebook.com/live now DT. Pardon me. Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. After the shows go live, you can go and pick them up on our archives by searching them. And you can go to Stitcher, TuneIn, Podbean, the RSS feed, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes podcast, and more, and search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora to pick up our shows there. We want to thank Charney's Menswear and Tuxedos, the proud studio partner of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where we sit at every Monday through Friday from 3150 Erie Boulevard East in Syracuse, New York. And when we're traveling, obviously, they are our travel partner as well for the studio. Utica Pizza Company, the Wildcat Sports Pub, as well as True by Hilton, Camillus, a stone's throw from Utica, from the Wildcat Sports Pub, I should say. Also want to give a special thank you to Dominic's Restaurant every Wednesday with trivia at 7. Tremendous week this week. A Press Room Pub Tuesday at 7 had one of the biggest crowds we've ever had, and we're in the middle of the summer. So thank you to Press Room, and thank you to everybody that showed up for that. Honda City of Liverpool, Carvel DeWitt, our longest standing partner, Canine Campground, dog boarding and dog daycare, Home Team Pub. And of course, I want to give a very, very heartfelt and special thank you in the here and now to being fueled by Monster Energy and for having these amazing drinks that I love. Very, very good. A lot of great stuff in them. Strawberry Banana is my favorite. Body Armor. So I want to thank Body Armor for everything that they do. I'm happy that they've partnered with us. I'm happy that they help to replenish and rejuvenate me when I'm on the road and when I'm doing my show. Natural flavors and sweeteners, electrolytes, it's coconut water, plenty of vitamins are in this beautiful thing. And it's basically their thing is it's time to ditch your outdated sports drink and make the switch to Body Armor, as I did. So make the switch with me and let's jump on to Body Armor. So they sit right behind me here, and very proud to have them in the beautiful, wonderful refrigerators of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. So Jay said, I was shocked UConn took him back. I guess speaking of Randy Edsall there. So we've covered the American Athletic East Division. It's time for me to cover the West Division, which is right over there. Everything's backwards when I do this. So this is the West Division. We're going in alphabetical order. We're going to start with the Houston Cougars. And just to give you a little taste here and a little fill, if you're just tuning in, we appreciate you watching and listening. We have covered all of the American Athletic East Division. That includes East Carolina, UConn for now, as well as Cincinnati. It also is UCF and Temple that we have covered, USF as well. So you had all of these teams come through, these 6 teams, as there's 6 on one, 6 on the other. We now are jumping into the Houston Cougars to start things off on the west side of things for the American. The Houston Cougars, I'm excited about Houston. Okay, Houston, before he got hurt, De'Ara King was doing a tremendous job. These are his numbers from last year. Returning passer on the team, 2,982 yards, 36 passing touchdowns. He had a lot of stuff going on. Rushing, Patrick Carr returns to the Houston Cougars, 152 attempts, 868 yards, 5 touchdowns. Receiving, Marquez Stevenson returns with 75 catches, 1,019 receiving yards, which says a lot with some of the other returners around the American Athletic only had about 300, 200 receiving yards. He had 1,019. Speaking of Marquez Stevenson, and 9 touchdowns receiving. Their returning tackler is Gleason Sprewell with 81. Sack leader Isaiah Chambers with 4.5. And Gleason Sprewell also led the team in interceptions with 3. So returning on their depth chart offensively, returning starters, they have Marquez Stevenson at wide receiver, who I just mentioned. They have Keith Corbin and Courtney Lark at wide receiver. I got a good feeling about Courtney Lark this season, so just Circle that. Left tackle, Josh Jones. Center, Braylon Jones. Right tackle, Jared Williams. And then quarterback, De'Ara King and Patrick Carr at running back with Kyle Porter. Returning on the defensive side, there are 5. Peyton Turner, I should say, defensive end. Emil Fleming at defensive tackle, Leroy Godfrey at defensive end, and then Gleason Sprewell at safety, and Deontay Anderson at safety as well, are returning to the team. Dana Holgerson comes over from West Virginia. It's his first season with the team. His career record in 8 years of being a head coach is 61-41. And like I said, he brought in some new offensive and defensive coordinators. The schedule for Houston this season, they'll be at Oklahoma to start off the season, which is pretty tasty, August 31st. And they will also face off against Washington State. And those will be, really their biggest games. They'll be at NRG Stadium against Washington State. So excited to see their matchup against Washington State. Shout out to Gardner Minshew, who I used to cover in the American, who went over to Washington State, who is now the backup quarterback of the Jaguars. Woohoo. Very excited about that. Digging the facial hair as well, as the GOAT is in full effect. So Houston, Oklahoma, and Washington State, I'm excited about that. I feel good about Houston. I think Houston's got a good shot of winning the division. I think they have a good shot of doing some big things nationally this year if Dana Holgerson can be a spark to this team. I mean, obviously, we know that Tom Herman did a great job before he went on to Texas, and then his offensive coordinator, Major Applewhite, was given a raise to the head coach. And Applewhite, after a couple seasons, things just didn't work out. And defense was a priority for Houston. And Houston didn't look Houston-esque like it did under Tom Herman. It didn't look the same under Major Applewhite. So now we have a chance to see it under Dana Holgerson. And I feel good about Houston. I think Houston is one of those teams that can be a national power that keeps the American on the map. So I'm not going to say puts them on the map because it already has, but I think keeps them on the map is important. The Memphis Tigers, the next team up in the American Athletic West Division, in the wake-up call preview of the American Athletic 2019-20 football season. The Memphis Tigers, first and foremost, I'm ecstatic that Mike Norvell became really the first head coach besides maybe Ken Niumatalolo. But, Ken Niumatalolo struggled the last couple seasons with Navy. Mike Norvell has had a fantastic run with Memphis, has gotten them to bowl games, and has gotten them to back-to-back American Athletic Championship games, and both of those against UCF, and both of them in Orlando. Unfortunately for Memphis, they didn't win, but obviously Memphis was put on the map. In my opinion, in my time around Memphis was put on the map by Justin Fuente, who I now cover with Virginia Tech, and love the fact that I get to talk to him and that I've been able to talk to him in both conferences. And then when Mike Norvell came in, he kept it going and just brought a lot of success to the team. So, Memphis is relevant to me. I think, they're sending guys to the NFL. Darrell Henderson, I honestly think is going to be a fantasy stud. I honestly think that if, hopefully Todd Gurley's healthy, but I think Darrell Henderson's going to get third down opportunities and goal line opportunities and short yardage situation. I also think he's going to be handed the ball in the middle of the field and let him kind of run off because he can. And I think that if there is any significant injury or Todd Gurley just, has to be tailored down in order to have longevity in the NFL, I think Darrell Henderson is going to benefit from that too. So ultimately, I think Darrell Henderson is a tremendous player. I think he's going to be a tremendous player in the NFL. He has great potential with it. And, he came from Memphis. And there's a lot of good players that come from Memphis. And I'm excited about what they're going to do. And I'm excited that Mike Norvell really became the first coach to be so successful in the American and decide to stay as opposed to moving forward somewhere else. So very, very excited about this. Their depth chart returns 7 starters. DeMonte Coxey and Pop Williams. Love the names, Coxey and Pop, both returning at wide receiver. Dylan Parham is returning at left guard. Parham. Dustin Woodard is returning at center. Tight end, Joey Magnifico. Love that name too. Memphis might have my favorite names. And Sean Dykes are returning both at tight end. And Brady White's coming back as the quarterback. So I'm very excited about this. Defensively, they have 8 starters returning. Jonathan Wilson at D end. Nose guard, O'Brien Goodson. Bryce Huff at D tackle is returning. Linebackers, Austin Hall, J.J. Russell, as well as Josh Perry. And corner T.J. Carter and Tyrez Lindsey are returning at safety. And as far as the leaders in passing, Brady White comes back with 3,296 passing yards, 26 touchdowns last season. Rushing, Patrick Taylor Jr., who is tremendous and made himself known even with Darrell Henderson on the field. That says something. 208 attempts, 1,122 yards, and 16 rushing touchdowns. So if you like Darrell Henderson, Patrick Taylor keeps getting numbers like this. He's going to get into the NFL himself. DeMonte Coxey returns as the leading receiver, 72 catches, 1,174 yards, and 7 touchdowns. The only team that I mentioned from the American so far that is returning a 1,000-plus yard rusher and a 1,000-plus yard receiver. Tackles, Tyrez Lindsey, 71 tackles. Sacks, Bryce Huff with 9.5. And interceptions, TJ Carter with 2. I feel good about Memphis. I think Memphis has a shot. I think Houston and Memphis really honestly have a shot. I would love to see Navy have a shot as well. But, Navy's they got to bump it up. They got to find their magic again. They got to find their footing. So an opposing AAC unnamed assistant coach said, quote, "They weren't as athletic as some other years with their backfield, but they have that specific system of developing guys. They can fix that." End quote. So Navy, the midshipmen, they are going to their schedule. They have Holy Cross out of conference. They have Air Force out of conference. Obviously, that's a matchup that they keep. Army is their last game of the season. Played a day before my grandmother's birthday on December 14th. So, and then they have, they'll be at Notre Dame. So, we're used to seeing them with Army and Notre Dame and Air Force and whatnot. And then they're in the American now. After spending so many years as an independent, they joined the American as a football-only school, which is pretty cool. The Navy gave up over 100 years as an independent to join the American and have the American have Navy in it. And in my opinion, Army and Air Force should be in the American as well because it's called the American. And its representation and their ability to overcome all adversity is true American. And so having Navy in makes a lot of sense. And I think having Army and Air Force would also make sense in that respect. So depth chart-wise, they're only returning 3 starters to Navy, which is probably good because they need some change. They need some new scenery. They have had, some struggles, and their defensive coordinator, like I said, has changed. So, they do have some newness that has come in to Navy, and not only, like I said, their defense, Brian Newberry and Brian Norwood being the new defensive coordinators, and Dale Pearson leaving the team. So for Navy, they have 3 returning starters for Navy, and Navy is going to be returning Ford Higgins, their center. I love that. Malcolm Perry, their quarterback, is back. Nelson Smith, their fullback, is back. Defensively, they only returned 3 as well. Elon Nash, safety. Nizair Cromartie at outside linebacker, and nose guard Jackson Pittman. So the team of all the teams that I've mentioned from Cincinnati, let's go to the board here. So of all the teams that I've mentioned in the American Athletic Conference, from East Carolina to UConn to UCF to Memphis to Cincinnati to Temple and USF and Houston, Navy is returning the least amount of starters, 3 on offense and 3 on defense. They've also had, like I said, a ton of struggles the last couple of years, so maybe that's a good thing that they have a bunch of new leaders that will hopefully emerge here. Navy, Malcolm Perry returns with 222 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Malcolm Perry led the team in rushing, 7 touchdowns, 1,087 yards on 172 attempts. Receiving, C.J. Williams, 187 yards on 9 catches, led the team because they're known for the triple option. No touchdowns. Tackles, Nizair Cromartie with 58. Sacks, Nizair Cromartie with 3.5. And Jacob Springer returns with 2 interceptions to lead Navy. I'm hoping for some changes. I think the American West goes through Houston and Memphis, but I'd love to see Navy finish in the top 3. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, and I would be very surprised if Navy had 3 seasons. I'd be very surprised if Navy had 3 seasons in a row where they struggle. So hopefully things will start turning around for Navy. We're going to take a step aside here in Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. We've already leaked into hour 2, but we will finish the American before we start the ACC. So stay with us here where sports meets life. for this fast break on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt, on wakeupcalldt.com, and on Facebook Live, facebook.com/livenowdt. Charney's Men's Clothing is your one-stop shop for your men's dress up and dress down wear. Located on 3150 Erie Boulevard East in Syracuse, Charney's Men's Clothing is proud to be your trusted name for decades in suits, sport coats, tuxedos, and all accessories. Charney's Men's Clothing also provides sports and leisure-themed casual wear for the everyday man. Stop in and see our welcome and friendly staff on 3150 Erie Boulevard East in Syracuse.
Dominic's Restaurant, located on 1370 Burnett Avenue in Syracuse, is your home for Trivia Wednesday nights, 7 to 9 p.m., featuring host Dan Tortora. Assemble your team and join us at Dominic's Restaurant for free trivia with weekly prizes. Call 315-471-4262 to reserve your team's table.
I'm George Townsend of Honda City with some good advice when buying a new car. The true cost of owning a new car is determined by the appraised value when you trade it. No vehicle appraises higher than a Honda. Next, look for low APRs and deep discounts. You also want low maintenance costs and great fuel economy. That's why my advice to you is to buy a new Honda. Looking pre-owned, visit our Honda Certified Used Car Center. Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard, Liverpool, or HondaCity-CNY.com.
It would be a pity if you don't shop at Honda City.
For all of us that have always wanted our favorite restaurant to come to us, it's now a reality in Central New York with It's a Utica Thing, with Utica Pizza Company bringing their wonderful recipes that they've handed down through generations to you, to your event, to your business, to your home. It's a Utica Thing, proudly bringing Utica Pizza Company on wheels to your location. Call 315-738-8946. That's 315-738-8946 to bring Utica Pizza Company to your doorstep with It's a Utica Thing. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. We are inside of the American Athletic Conference preview, which was the first hour of today's show, which has leaked a little bit into hour number 2, and we are finishing up here with SMU as well as Tulane and Tulsa before starting the ACC. This is live from the Charney's Menswear and Tuxedo Studios here on 3150 Erie Boulevard East in Syracuse, New York. We appreciate you being here, and we thank you so much for your support, your love, your ears, as well as your eyes, and we thank you for all you do. I hope you're having yourselves a great week, and you're taking care of yourself, and you're being good to each other. SMU is up next. I like the fact that Sonny Dykes is here. I think that SMU is getting better. When Chad Morris was there for his final season, I think it was his third and final season before he went over to Arkansas for last season, we saw a jump with SMU. Now, there's been some changes, and ultimately, there's going to be a little bit of a rocky road when there's change in coaching, and you have some players leave and whatnot. You have your quarterback leave in Ben Hicks to rejoin Chad Morris at Arkansas, but ultimately, I think SMU is trending upward. I do think that this is a team that can win 5 or 6 games this season. I think the American West is going to be tougher than maybe people give it credit for because Tulane's gotten better. I would like to think that Tulsa can start winning some of these close games. If not, then I think Philip Montgomery's job could be in jeopardy. But ultimately, I think it goes through Houston and Memphis, as I said. I think Navy jumps up. I think Navy can get to 5-6 wins. I think SMU can get there. I think that Tulane can get there. So, I think that this gets close, and it's just whether or not Houston and Memphis just, rise above everybody. And if they get to double-digit wins and whatnot, there might be more of a Giants moat, that's dividing these teams, but it could be closer than you think. I think that there's, arguably 4 or 5 teams out of the 6 that can make a splash inside of the American Athletic Conference West Division. Now, SMU has 7 returning starters offensively. Reggie Roberson Jr. at wide receiver, James Proche, and Judah Bell all at wide receiver. Left guard Alan Ali, as well as center Hayden Howerton. Right tackle Jalen Thomas, is returning, and Ryan Becker at tight end. Defensively, Houston returns 8. They have Turner Cox at defensive end, defensive tackle Demerick Gary, Pono Davis at nose tackle, love the name, Delonte Scott at defensive end, Richard Moore at weak side linebacker. Safeties returning are Rodney Clemens, Patrick Nelson, and Trevor Denbrough. All 3 of the safeties, most safeties that we have returning starters, are all here with SMU of any team I mentioned so far. A returning passing leader is William Brown with 625 yards and 7 passing touchdowns for SMU. Rushing is Kamon Freeman, 75 attempts, 339 yards, 6 touchdowns. Receiving James Proche, 93 receptions, 1,199 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Big-time stuff coming from SMU, who sent some good receivers to the NFL, including most recently, I call him Hands, Cortland Sutton, to the Denver Broncos, who is going into his 2nd season. And tackle-wise, Richard Moore, 92 tackles. He also leads the team in 5 sacks as he returns, and interceptions. Kevin Johnson and Patrick Nelson, each with 2. Sonny Dykes was 5-8 in his first season last season, which is not too shabby for a first-time head coach with a school. Overall, in 8+ years of coaching, he's 46-53. And Sonny Dykes and SMU this season will take on Arkansas State, Texas State, North Texas, and TCU. Outside of TCU, all those games look good, and I think TCU could go either way for SMU. And if they win that one, that puts them on the map a little bit and gives them some pride and some things to look forward to as they jump in to their first conference game, which will be at South Florida on September 28th. So I feel good about SMU. I'm thinking 5 or 6 wins for SMU, which to me is a lot better than what they had a few years ago. To have back-to-back years where they can have 5 wins, it says a lot about where they can stand here in the grand scheme of things. So I'm excited to see it, and I think SMU is going to improve. The next one that we have, second to last team in the American Athletic Conference in our 2019-20 American Athletic Football preview, we have Tulane. Now, Tulane, here we go, and what we have to say, an opposing AAC assistant coach said, quote, "The offensive coordinator change is going to be interesting. Willie Fritz is trying to change the identity of a team that was successful at what they did." So kind of questioning why would they change something if it was working. The new offensive coordinator is Will Hall. So looking at the depth chart, 5 returning starters coming to the team, being on the team this year from last year. Darnell Mooney at wide receiver, Keyshawn McLeod at right tackle, starting quarterback Justin McMillan, who I spent a lot of time speaking with Willie Fritz about, as well as Darius Bradwell, returning running back for the team. Tulane's put together some good running backs over time. And then defensively, they return 8, almost all of their linebackers, as well as their whole defensive line, because they run a 3-4 set. So D-tackle DeAndre Williams is back. Jeffrey Johnson, the nose tackle, is back. Cameron Sample, the defensive end, is back. Outside linebacker Patrick Johnson, inside linebacker Lawrence Graham are all back. Nickelback Will Harper is back. Cornerback Thacarius Keys and safety P.J. Hall are all back for the Tulane Green Wave and Willie Fritz. Fritz is in his 4th year at Tulane. He's had success everywhere and has built a rapport for being able to go anywhere and build success. And hopefully he'll continue to do it here, as the team last season got to a 7-6 record. Big ups to them. They won their bowl game, the Cure Bowl, 41-24 over Louisiana, which was a nice little local game for them, playing a Louisiana team coming from the state of Louisiana as well. So Willie Fritz, 16-21, is the head coach of the Green Wave over 3 years. His career record is 170-90 in 22 years of being a head coach. So almost double he has wins to losses, 170-90. And other news are returning starters for them. Justin McMillan, 1,304 yards passing and 10 passing touchdowns. Darius Bradwell, 201 attempts. They like to run the ball. 1,134 yards and 11 touchdowns. Receiving, Darnell Mooney had 48 catches, 993 yards, 8 touchdowns. So nice balanced receiving and rushing team. And if you look at the NFL, there's some good Tulane running backs that move forward and find success. So this team is no slouch. Tackle leader is Marvin Moody coming back with 71. Patrick Johnson with 10.5 sacks, the most of anybody I've named returning to the American. And interceptions, 6 different players had 1 interception on the team. So 1 is not the greatest number, obviously, for interceptions, but 6 different players getting an interception last year shows that there is a broad talent base in the defense of the Tulane Green Wave, and that you don't have to just rely on 1 or 2 players. So Tulane, I feel good about them too. I think this is another team that can get to 5 or 6 wins. So I think Navy, SMU, and Tulane are all those teams that can get anywhere from 5 to 6, maybe 7 wins. And I agree with Jay, who says that he believes that the Tulane will be a bowl team this year. I agree with that as well. The final team to have is the Tulsa Golden Hurricane. They are led by Philip Montgomery, their head coach. In 4 years as their head coach, he's 21-29, and that's the record that he has as a head coach in general overall in his career. Only ever been a head coach with Tulsa, and he steps into his 5th season this season. He's also the offensive coordinator for the team. A little interesting here. Shout out to Willamika, who's watching. Love Willamika. Have nothing but tremendous respect for Willamika. And I hope to sit down with him and get to talk with him soon, as I've covered him at West Jenny, and he's just a good kid and a hell of a person to be around. And I also appreciate your family too, Will, so tell your parents I said hi. Depth chart-wise, Tulsa returns 6 offensive players, starters. Keenan Johnson at wide receiver and Keelan Stokes at wide receiver. I remember J.J. Stokes when he played for San Francisco on the other side of Jerry Rice. Left tackle, Chris Ivy Jr. Left guard, Chris Paul returns. Seth Boomer returns at quarterback, but Zach Smith is also there now. And Shamari Brooks returns at running back. I've asked him about Shamari before. Defense returns 7 starters for Tulsa. That includes Tyrus Stevenson at nose guard, Travis Gibson at defensive end, outside linebacker Diamond Cannon, as well as Cooper Edmiston and Zaven Collins at outside linebacker, Cooper middle linebacker, Bryson Powers at nickelback, and Manny Bunch at strong safety. Seth Boomer returns to the team as their leading passer, 1,378 yards and 9 passing touchdowns last season. Shamari Brooks, 967 yards on 229 attempts, a lot of rushes, 7 touchdowns. They like to run the ball as well at Tulsa. Receiving, Keelan Stokes, 41 catches, 575 yards, 2 touchdowns. Cooper Edmiston, 113 tackles. That is the biggest leader, save the best for last, I guess, of any returning tackler in all 12 teams of the American Athletic. The one with the most from last year is Cooper Edmiston with 113 sacks. Travis Gibson with 4, and Cooper Edmiston also led the team with interceptions with 4. So middle linebacker, 4 interceptions and 113 tackles. Darn it if that's not a good thing. Listen, Tulsa, if you don't see it by the numbers, if you're not listening truly to the breakdown of this, statistically and realistically, Tulsa has some talent on offense and defense. It's just about finishing games. It's about finishing and closing the door. Philip Montgomery has not had tremendous records at Tulsa, but overall he's 21-29. He's only 8 games from being dead even. And when you go back and look at a lot of these games and how close they were, Central Arkansas, well, they won that game. So at Texas, they lost 28-21. They lost to Arkansas State 29-20. Another close game, they lost to South Florida 25-24. They lost to Tulane 24-17. So, a lot of those games last year, very, very, very close. Now, if they had won those games, if we add 1, 2, 3, at least 4 games, now all of a sudden they have 7 wins, and now all of a sudden they're a bowl team. So Tulsa is one of those teams that just has to shut the door when they get to it, but they do have talent. I think the American Athletic West Division is potentially setting up to be very, very dicey this year, because I like Houston and Memphis at the top, but like I said, I think Navy's going to improve. I think they can get 5 wins, 6 wins. SMU is going to improve, 5, 6 wins. And then Tulsa, if they close out some of these games, they could get to 5, 6, 7. And I think that Tulane is a 7-win team. I do agree with Jay about that. So, or that they're a bowl team. I think they're a 7-win team. So, in all honesty, I think the American Athletic West Division is going to be pretty awesome this year, when a lot of the focus in recent history of the American, which is very young, has been on the East and about UCF and USF and Temple, really. And now Cincinnati's better. So ultimately, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be really good. And we're going to end this video on Facebook.com, Facebook.com/LiveNowDT here on Facebook Live. And we're going to start a new one that's strictly the ACC preview. We'll be going past 11 today because we underpromise and overdeliver. That's just how we do it here at Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. So let's take a step aside. Let's go into a fast break. And when we come back, we will tackle the ACC. Thank you to each and every single one of you that weighed in. Thank you to everybody that watched and listened to this video and to this first part of the show on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt and on wakeupcalldt.com. Shout out to Cincinnati, East Carolina, Temple, UCF, UConn, USF, Houston, Memphis, Navy, SMU, Tulane, and Tulsa for all giving me an opportunity to cover you over the last few years and speak with your coaches and your players. I greatly appreciate it, and it never goes unnoticed or underappreciated. I thank you so much for your time. So let's end this video on Facebook Live. Let's keep the party going. Coming up next, stay right here to Facebook and to MixLR, the ACC preview. 14 teams, 2 divisions, 7 per division is coming up next.